Hello and welcome back to the Mason J Show. Thanks so much for joining us for episode 36 with Nicholas Gilson, co-owner and founder of Gilson Snow, making high-quality skis and snowboards out of Pennsylvania. If you're interested to hear more about Nicholas's journey creating Gilson Snow with co-founder Austin Royer out of a classroom, please refer to episode 23, Nicholas's first appearance on the Mason J Show, where we go in depth on what it takes to start a snowboard company from scratch. On today's episode, we recap a tragic event that happened last year in November. The Gilson factory burned to the ground. Today, we hear all about that journey and what it takes to come back from the ashes. Please enjoy this episode with Nicholas Gilson. Everybody, welcome back to the Mason J Show. Happy season 4. I have here today Mr. Nicholas Gilson, who is back on the podcast to talk today about his company and some crazy events that have happened in the last year since we saw him.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on the show. It's been a wild, high-amplitude year. The highs have been high and the lows have definitely been low.
I can only imagine. And we're back here at the Gilson Farm factory, I guess not.
Yeah, once upon a time it was a factory.
Yeah. Setting up for the summer snow day behind us, where Gilson's going to have a really awesome rad rail jam here in the middle of summer.
Yep.
It's August in Pennsylvania, and they've got a bunch of snow and a rail jam. Tons of athletes that are going to come and throw some really sick tricks, and you guys are giving away prizes for best competitions, right? Exactly. And everything. Cool. Yeah. You guys psyched for the event?
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. It's been coming out of that fire and factory burning down to the ground, the way in which the snow sports, ride community rallied around us was really nothing short of extraordinary. So, this is a big day to party and celebrate with everyone as we build back.
Yeah, so let's just jump right into it, because the last time we talked to you guys, you were ramping up for, a really awesome season, tons of boards being produced at the factory that was just behind us, that is now just a pad of concrete. What can you tell us what happened on November 18th?
Yeah, so on November 18th, we got a notification on the phone that there was smoke detected in our edging room, and we, within the hour, discovered that the facility had about a 100-foot tall flame on top of it and was burning down to the ground. The team gathered here up on the hill and watched the whole thing come down.
Yeah, and I remember, because I saw it on social media, you made a pretty emotional post, when you kind of, in the morning of, after everything had burned and the fire had settled, walking through the factory, and you showed all the machines that were just burned to a crisp. What was that like, seeing this factory that you've poured your blood, sweat, and tears into?
Yeah, I think that at first pass, no one was hurt, right? And
Which is great.
That's the most important thing, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
If someone were hurt in this fire, it would be just a phenomenal, just a tremendously different situation, right?
Yeah.
And so we were exceedingly lucky that this was in the middle of the night, that there was no one in the building. And then, the first thing that emotions that I was filled with was just extreme gratitude, right? There were these extraordinary men and women charging into a building with a massive flame on top of it, accelerants in the building from our manufacturing process, and just so outrageously brave fighting this fire. And then, I think that the next set of emotions that I felt was extreme optimism, believe it or not. And
I believe it.
The team and my wife included, were checking in on my mental health, because they're like, man, Nick must really be in a state of shock. But, I think looking at this facility come to the ground, yes, there's a lot of memories there. Yes, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, as you put it, that went into building that facility. But at the end of the day, right, what an amazing opportunity to rebuild from scratch with everything we now know. And
what is that process like? Because you guys lost all your molds for the boards, like the presses that you'll use to make all of them. Those burned up. So are you guys having to remanufacture your design plans? Do you guys still have the builds for those?
Yeah, we've done a good job of backing up the IP, and a lot of the most technical stuff is in our team members' minds, right? So that's backed up there, and I think that we now have the opportunity to build a massive facility.
Yeah.
And leading up to the fire, we were shipping out to over 50 countries around the world. We were getting really considerably back ordered. We were doubling the size of the company pretty much every year without a single extra square foot. Austin was seriously working his magic. We had machines in the driveway underneath tents, and it was getting really, really tight. And so, certainly not how we had wanted to do it. But look, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and you're going to get kicked in the teeth. And building a business is not about trying to figure out somehow how to avoid all of the obstacles you're going to face along the way. But
We're in the middle of something.
I don't think the signs are working.
No.
Building a business is very much not about somehow trying to avoid all of the obstacles along the way, but instead about how you respond to them.
Right. Right, and I know that it's interesting. You said earlier that one of the emotions you felt was optimism. Looking at this beautiful creation of a company that you've put together, kind of just burned down in front of you. And it's interesting that optimism is an emotion you felt, because I'm not sure a lot of people that would be their first thing. It takes a strong mind and a person who's experienced trouble before to realize that through catastrophes like this there can be great outcomes down the line. And that's one of the things, like when I saw your post, when I woke up that morning of the 18th and saw this post you made, and I was just like jaw dropped. Not what I expected to see. Yeah. But I agree that because I had been here before that, I saw the factory before that, and everything that you guys had crammed in there to make this ample amount of boards that you guys are shipping out. And I also thought like it was kind of weird, because it's like, I don't know if I should be feeling this right, but it was, wow, this is kind of an interesting opportunity for the company, being like, yes, tragic to lose everything, and now you guys have to jump through so many hurdles, and all this new work when you were planning on just like hitting the ground running for this winter season with all these boards. But now it's an interesting opportunity to have an influx of insurance money that I'm sure was super helpful for you guys to recover from the machines.
The situation in this country is kind of crazy. I don't want to go into the weeds on that. I now know more about insurance recovery than I ever cared to.
Right.
And it's an ongoing saga.
Right.
And I've talked to a few folks who have literally just gotten their insurance recovery payouts from Hurricane Sandy years and years ago. So it's not an immediate fix by any means. And we're lucky to have been in a position to, we were insured, which is great, but that's it's a protracted and long evolving issue.
So, details of insurance on the side, but regardless of that, this, and as you just said, is an interesting opportunity to just kind of like revamp your entire production. Like, how much you guys have secured a new factory space, is that right?
Yeah, we've moved into a facility that is literally 8 times the size, about 11 miles down the road. Yeah. So we're
so much space.
We've got a 100-day sprint, which is kind of nuts. So it took us a long time to get the new facility and the deal and the new equipment properly, to get that deal ironed out. And then the second, the ink had before the ink had even dried, right? Austin's in that building, getting machines moved in, shipping equipment across the country, building walls. I've got a massive new robot that still kind of scares me every time it moves because it goes so fast.
Is that like one of the CNC machines, the cutting machines?
A new CNC, on a whole new level. So, I think with every major event like this, right, fires have been clearing the way for what's next for a long time. And
right.
Yeah.
Now, I know when you and I had talked on the phone before, you had mentioned, you have such high hopes for the company moving forward with all these new machines and new space. Are you guys foreseeing a different build to the snowboards? Are you looking to enhance them in any way now that you have some newer machines and space to kind of develop?
No question. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we've... right, when something burns down and you build it back from scratch, you don't build it. It'd be statistically impossible, I think, to get back to exactly where we were.
Right.
So it's the type of event that either kills you or launches you forward. Immediately after the fire, I was very much confident that we'd be in the latter case, that we'd be rocketing out of this. I now, with the benefit of 6+ months since the fire, have the wherewithal to recognize that was totally unearned confidence. And there's been a lot of sort of trials of me and our team in the months since then. But now at this juncture, with our new facility just a month out from being ready to turn the machines on and start shipping boards and skis out around the world, I can say that I'm exceedingly confident that not only are we going to be able to produce faster and at a greater number of skis and snowboards a day, but the actual quality of the snowboards and skis is going to be
Right.
fundamentally better. The way we're pressing them, the flex profiles that we're dialing in, all of the molds that we're cutting are, as you mentioned, all of the molds were completely torched. So we're not building the molds back the exact same way we used to. We're taking the opportunity to make sure that we're improving through this.
Right. And I've really enjoyed, I said this on the last podcast, for those of you that don't know, I have two of the Gilson models, the Undead and the Dual, which is sitting off camera there to the side of us. And both of those boards have been such a amazing tool for me to progress my riding, especially in the park. With the 3D technology that you guys have on that base, I have so much more confidence, especially trying rails and tubes, that I'm not catching edges. I can kind of jump on there and have a lot more forgiveness in the times that I like overlean, and my edge slides out from under me, or like I lean forward too much. That little wiggle room that 3D base and the flexibility, especially in those two models, have has been so helpful for me. Are you guys changing that technology at all moving forward, or is that kind of like a bread and butter?
Evolution. Yeah. So the R&D side of the business is constantly working with our athletes to figure out what's the next evolution in terms of the three-dimensional design, of course. And I think that when I think about sort of like take a step back and zoom out and think about the greater business and the greater industry, what we're focused on is that we think there's really just a better way of doing business. There's a better way of making snowboards and skis and getting them on people's doorsteps and then under their feet. And when we look at the way that the legacy players have designed their production flows and supply chains, and not knocking them, ton of respect for those that came before us and have built an amazing foundation. But harvesting trees in Europe, shipping them to Asia to press them into snowboards, to ship them back to the U.S. and Europe for sale, and then they're sitting in distribution and retail, and the artists aren't being paid particularly fairly, right? And so I think that there's ways that you can innovate to create both a better product, better experience on the mountain, but also tie artists into the process, create really cool stuff together, do it with a tight supply chain, right? Like the trees that we're building with are coming from right down the road on the back of our beater pickup truck, you know? And so, instead of a board that you're picking up from a store being, a year or two or maybe even 3 years old, when you're grabbing a Gilson, right, that was made for you and came out of the press typically about 10 days ago. So you're getting the latest out of our facility, and in this way, we're making sure there's no overstock waste, and we're building a much more efficient process that allows us to, build for you instead of a warehouse shelf.
Yeah, and for those of you that may be new to the podcast, Nick was on a previous episode where we went into a lot more detail of the creation of Gilson as a whole, and basically like the whole company's origin story of you being a teacher and developing this company basically out of the classroom with the students that you were teaching.
Yeah, and Austin Royer, who's
as well,
our
yes.
COO. Yeah, so he was the other teacher down the hallway. And
right.
What started as a school project, we more or less ended up launching the company out of the classroom now 10 years ago as of a week ago. So the company just turned 10.
So if any of you guys are interested in hearing more about that origin story, there is a previous episode with Nicholas Gilson on there that you guys are more than welcome to check out. Nick, moving forward, I know that the Telluride trip that we just had in March was such a great time. Do you guys have more trips on the horizon where the community can come together?
Yeah, we're going to Schweitzer this year up in northern Idaho. It's going to be so nuts. This has been one of the most fun things to develop in recent years. So basically the idea was, look, we're making all of this rad gear and shipping it all over the world. And when things get insanely busy here, it's like the best POW days out there. So how do we try and reconcile and bring this stuff together? And how do we get out there and spending more time with our community of riders and skiers? And so Andrew and Vanessa came up with this idea for the Gilson Getaway trip. Last year was just it was so unbelievably fun getting together. Yeah, it was crazy, right? Like people from all different walks of life, right? You got people who are there from different career backgrounds, different parts of the country, but all with this shared love of snowboarding, skiing, and getting out in the mountain and getting after it. And, bringing all of these hooligans together and then, being in like a 5-star resort with pasta turfs was just hilarious.
So nice. It was so nice.
It was really a blast.
Yeah.
It was really a blast.
Telluride was a great home for that first weekend. And I can attest that I met a lot of people from your team and from the Gilson community that I hadn't met before and may not have had the opportunity to get as close with as I did. And I think that was such a cool opportunity for me personally to grow my network, but also to meet other people my age that are like-minded, that are out there killing it on the hill and off the hill. And I think that you guys are really doing something special with those events.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I take no credit myself. All the credit goes to Andrew and Vanessa, who have just done an awesome job of bringing it together. And we learned a lot. I think the first year went off without a hitch, but we also just in the same vein of the conversation we've been having, right? Every time you do something, whether good or bad, it's an opportunity to learn from it, an opportunity to come back and do it bigger and better. So next year's gonna be nuts.
How has the local community here in New Berlin, Pennsylvania, is the proper name for this town, right?
Yeah, so we're sort of in the Lewisburg, Middleburg, Selinsgrove, Mifflinburg is sort of this area of central Pennsylvania, and it's been amazing, man. I mean, I think that next morning, as the fire was still smoldering and the fire departments were putting out their reignition, you could measure the community support, I think, in the amount of bagels that showed up. So,
nice.
We're rolling a whiteboard into a room with just people who are just arriving, right? Not people we called, people just showing up to show their support, roll up their sleeves and offer a helping hand. And everyone was bringing bagels and coffee. And we rolled out the whiteboard and had that first meeting about, okay,
what do we do?
Blank slate, clean whiteboard.
Yeah.
What's next?
And I know, you touched on it earlier with you guys harvesting or collecting your trees from just right down the road. And what we touched on in the podcast, the previous episode we did, how much you guys really rely on the community here and the resources of the land here to produce the quality of boards that you do. So it's so nice to see that the community itself then came back and supported. And I know you guys are such supporters of the fire department, making custom boards for a lot of firemen and firewomen in the county. And I am sure that they supported you guys as well throughout this entire event.
Yeah, pretty amazing. I mean, just it's one of those things, and sometimes it's kind of hard to find these days. But it's one of those events for me especially, and for our team and for this community. It just totally restores faith in humanity.
Yeah.
People have the ability to just be really, really good to each other, especially in times of adversity. And I'm deeply grateful.
Absolutely.
And that's what today's about, right? I mean, right behind us, we're setting up for a 3,000 plus person festival here out on the farm, where the shop used to be. The cement foundation, which is still there, of course, is now the site of the stage. And so there are going to be musicians rocking on the footprint of where the shop used to be. And, 11 miles down the road, there are still people working, really working around the clock, getting machines and the new facility ready for production a month out.
When do you think you guys are going to have boards, like new boards shipping out?
September 14th.
Hard date. Nice. It's going to come up fast.
It's already been coming up fast. Yeah.
Do you guys have graphics and stuff in line for the new lineup?
Yep. And we've got a ton of collaborations for this coming year. That's awesome. And we released something called the Early Bird Bundle, which is a great way to gear up and a huge discount on getting new gear, which we're really grateful for because people have been getting orders in and they're not having to choose their board or bindings or the hoodie that comes with it yet. They get to wait to make their selection whenever they want. So some people are already saying like, oh, I want the Musashi, like let me get that on the production list, and other people are like, all right, I'm going to hold this token and play this card once they see what limited editions are coming out this year. It's been cool. And I mean, talk about support from the community, right? Riders and skiers, just knowing that we are in between facilities, right? We've got one that's burned to the ground, another one that's building up fast, and still just so much confidence, right? Making a bet and saying, look, we know that this crew is going to get the job done, and we know this board's going to ship out in September, so like, let's go, I'll put my order in. So that vote of confidence has been awesome and highly motivating. And then, also having other ski and snowboard companies reach out and say, after the fire, things like, this industry wants you, we care about you, you guys, you got a real place here. And that meant a lot too, right? It's like in a lot of worlds, people would be celebrating their competitors' stumbling blocks, and it very much felt like people were supportive in the industry as well.
Nice. Is there anybody of note that, really helped you guys out?
So yeah, I mean, a lot of folks offered help, which was great. And, we would have absolutely accepted it if we were in a position to, but until we have our new facility rolling, there's very little that we could do in the interim.
Yeah.
Well, on the Telluride trip, I will say that, that first night on the pub crawl, the fella who was there was actually one of the builders for Wagner, and he pulled me aside and shared some just really deeply impactful things. So a lot of respect for the Wagner team.
Awesome.
Great folks over there in Telluride.
Awesome. Is this off camera here? There's a piece of charred wood, it looks like, with your name in it. Is that from the original building?
Yeah, this was hanging up in the front of the building,
up.
so that's why it's a little toasted.
I see that. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. We were moving it around, and I was like, this looks important. Yeah. You know?
Austin made that years ago, yeah.
Very cool.
Pretty cool.
One of the, we touched on the artwork collaborations that you guys did, and speaking from my own experience, riding on 2 of your boards for 2 seasons and seeing a couple other people with Gilsons here and there, like, it is an interesting, like, community, especially when I see somebody else on the hill with one of your boards. Like, it's always kind of like, hey, nice board. You don't see them a lot, so it's fun. And
that's the fun part about still being small and growing quickly.
Yeah.
Is, if you see someone wearing a Beatles t-shirt, you don't go up and be like, oh my God, I love the Beatles also. Like, doesn't matter how amazing the Beatles are, right?
Funny,
it's just so ubiquitous. And so when you've got a smaller community that, really feels like they belong with what we're doing here and really feels like they're a part of it when our crew sees each other out in the mountain, it's
fun.
It's a community there.
Yeah, I saw one of your riders, Copper Mountain, had I think they just ended it, but they had their hike park still open. I believe last weekend was the last weekend for it. Yeah, and I was out there for a few days and saw, I don't know what his name was. Got like long, not Seth, but another guy of yours that has like super long curly hair. But he had your Undead board out there, rocking it on the rails, looking super steezy, and it's so cool. So many people that are around comment on the graphics, especially on the Undead. I've had a lot of compliments on the Duel.
When we first got started, I didn't want to have artwork on the snowboards at all.
That's so crazy. Yeah. Why would you do that?
So I was like, look, we're bringing this new technology to market. People should ride it for the performance. I mean, I was like a total nerd, right? And like,
you're a purist.
Just thinking like, then I would just be like, we should focus on like the science, right, or whatever. And it was the first moment where I came back to our early team with my tail just between my legs a couple months later. I was just flat out wrong. Like, we're looking at the data here, we're seeing what people want, and as much as these are high performance pieces of equipment, they are also a canvas and an opportunity to showcase artists. And now fast forward 9-10 years, and artwork has become one of the most, and working with artists has become one of the most important things that we do. So
and speaking from my personal preference, and also like the people that I surround myself with, what I hear them saying is the art on the board really does play a big role, especially when people are newer to the sport, might not recognize the differences in the technology as much. It kind of takes a trained body to recognize like the stiffness, and unless you've tried a bunch of different boards, sometimes it's hard to pick up on the different techs.
My total pet peeve is when I see someone out on the mountain who has a board or a pair of skis that's not right for them, but they got it for the artwork. They're like, or the opposite, right? They're on the right piece of equipment performance wise, but they're like, I just like hate the way these things look. That grinds my gears, because this is something that you really care about, right? This is something that you're investing in, and it's not cheap, and someone took the time to build that. And so you should be on the right piece of performance equipment, as well as on something that you really identify with and love. And so the ability to build for riders themselves instead of stocking things on a shelf has been hugely important, because we're getting people on the right gear, that's the right size, specs, performance, flex, everything, and then pairing that with something that they're really proud to rock on the mountain.
Yeah, and that's awesome, because you guys have such a good team, especially for your customer support side, whereas if you're looking to buy a new board, people can just email you guys, or maybe even call you or text you from the website and be like, hey, this is what I'm looking for, can you guys help? I like the graphic, I like this graphic, but I don't see it on the website on this board. Like, you guys can make a completely custom setup for someone who may not have the experience to know maybe what they want, or the tech that's right for them, right?
Yeah, whether it's a total expert who's like, I want these specific things, or someone who's like, I'd really love to have a little bit of help in figuring out what's right for me. And that's honestly one of the most fun things about building the business in this way. Right? We're now the largest and almost certainly fastest growing snowboard and ski company to have designed our business since the advent of FedEx and the internet, right? So
Right.
there's just a lot of new possibilities here. And when you look at the way that sort of these legacy players are set up, is their builders are on the other side of the world, and there's literal tanker ships that are taking product from one part of the world to the other. And so there's just a lot of disconnect there. And so for us, we're able to, instead of, again, building for these warehouse shelves and then just measuring the success of the business as a function of sell-through, right? Like how much of the stuff that we already made can we sell? Instead, we're making new friends and building new relationships, getting to know people, and then we're building for a human being instead of a shelf.
Beautiful. Who, let me see if I can word this question right. Since the fire, as you've touched on, and more than I can imagine, I'm sure that you and your team has gone through just an incredible amount of stress, and let's just say emotions overall.
Yep.
Who do you think you or the company is now since the fire that you guys weren't before? Take your time if you need to think about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about an event like this is nobody was hurt, and you can't burn the brand. So I guess, our factory burned down in November 2022, and you can say we're on fire, right? Like, people are amped. Like, people are so motivated. And I think when you're tested in this way, and you have the resolve, right, it creates something that's even more powerful, right? If the old expression, right, like, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And
Absolutely.
that's certainly not true for everything. But in this case, it certainly has rung true.
Nice. And you guys have just built such a supportive and powerful team. I've gotten the pleasure of meeting a lot of the members of your, call it upper executive team, or, the guys that are really making
executive team over here,
making everything come together. And I think, that's one of the things that we touched on earlier with, looking at this fire and seeing optimism. Yeah. I 100% agree that, with the team that you have, like you just said, you can't burn the brand, you can't burn the passion. Yeah. It's just such an unpredictable life event that's happened that you guys, like, I'm sure has brought you together, made you even more passionate about making this thing happen, giving you some, excitement, whether it's the right or wrong kind. Yeah. And I have, without a doubt, that you guys are just going to pull through this.
Thanks,
with flying
man.
colors.
It means a lot, Mason. And I think this is a shared human experience. There's no such thing as going through this life and not being faced with something that kicks you in the teeth and knocks you down. It's in the case of this business, it was a fire that burned down our factory, but everybody's got a story, right? There's no such thing as being human without having a story that's at least relatable in some regard. And so, look, it's not about whether or not you get knocked down. It's about how you get back up again.
100%. And we touched on that a lot, in the previous episode we did when we talked about the entire origin story of the company, like how much adversity you guys faced or how many challenges that seemingly would have stopped you, and the fact that you guys were ready to, like, throw in the towel in the early planning processes, but one of your students in the class was like, you can't stop. Yeah. And I think that's just such that, and everything else in total is just stacks the odds in your favor because of how much you guys have already overcome and pushed through.
I think one of the more powerful forces in this world is just persistence.
Yeah, keep on going.
It's figuring out how to stay alive and the staying power, right? And what's fascinating, right? A 5-year warranty, right? We've got one of the longest warranties, if not the longest warranty in the industry. And a 5-year warranty doesn't really mean much if you're 3 years old, So you're turning 10 now and showing perseverance, right? We've been through, obviously all of the sort of trials and tribulations of starting a company and building from zero, but then you throw a pandemic on top of that, which is obviously a shared experience for all of us, and then you throw a fire on top of that, right? It's like, okay, let's keep going.
Keep on going.
Head
Awesome.
down. What next?
Well, Nick, I really appreciate you spending some time with us before the event kicks off here behind us.
It's going to be a party today.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a blast. Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share before we hop off?
Just thank you to you, Mason, and to the entire community. Really appreciate you guys following along, and for all of the support through what's been a pretty high amplitude and challenging year.
Absolutely.
So, here's to the future.
Here's to the future.
Right,
see you around, Nick. Thanks so much for spending some time with us. Catch you guys on the next episode. See ya. Man, what a crazy journey the entire Gilson team has been through. since before the fire, during, and after. Thank you guys for tuning in to the end of this podcast with Nicholas Gilson. If you're interested in learning more about Gilson Snow or getting one of their boards, please do visit gilsonsnow.com, as they are now producing their 2024 season boards. You can use the code MasonJShow, all one word, to receive a discount on checkout that benefits me and helps me to continue producing episodes without going bankrupt. Thank you all for tuning in. Please do check out the full catalog of podcasts I have available, and we will catch you on the next one.